Welcome back to the France 24 newsroom in Paris. I'm Tom Burgess-Watson. Thank you very much for joining us. First, it's been exactly a week since the British Prime Minister Boris Johnson was re-elected with the promise of getting Brexit done. And in the past hour, the Premier has secured the approval of Parliament for his Brexit deal. This follows a vote in which MPs voted 358 to 234 to pass the second reading of that legislation. A clear example of just how the ratification process is much easier now for Boris Johnson and his party now that they have a stronger majority. Well, the final stages of ratification will take place after Christmas in the House of Lords, in the House of Commons, then the House of Lords. And in line with his campaign pledge, Boris Johnson aims to deliver Brexit by the 31st of January. Well, let's get perspective from Brussels now and cross to our correspondent there, Dave Keating. Dave, one of the consequences, perhaps, of this more emboldened Conservative Party is that, the Brexit deal looks like it's going to be a much harder deal than it might otherwise have been.
Yeah, initially Brussels had hoped, based on the size of Johnson's majority last week, that it was actually going to lead to more flexibility on his part. After all, he wouldn't be as dependent on the hardline Eurosceptic wing of his party, notably the ERG. But what's transpired over the past week is something very different than what Brussels had hoped for, because Johnson seems to be pursuing a strategy that is going toward a very hard Brexit and renewing a very distinct possibility of no deal, or a deal that's so minor, it would effectively be the same thing. Now, what's going to happen here is that this deal will allow the UK to leave the EU with a deal on January 31st, but that will really be a Brexit in name only. The UK will still have access to the single market. It will still have to follow EU rules for another 11 months until the end of 2020. And so that's going to create a very different situation than might have been envisioned by many people, but the process is going to be long going forward.
And Dave, has there been any official reaction from Brussels to today's news out of London?
Yeah, Charles Michel, the new European Council president, said this was an important step for the Article 50 ratification process, but he reminded the UK that they have to maintain a level playing field with the EU in any future relationship. But the prospects of that future relationship being a deep and comprehensive one, something, for instance, like the EU free trade deal with Canada, seem to be growing dim, because this deal includes a provision that would absolutely not let the UK extend its transition period past the end of 2020. That transition period is supposed to give time for negotiations to reach a future free trade arrangement. But in Brussels, they really don't think that 11 months is enough time to agree a full free trade arrangement like they have with Canada, for instance. And so now, with this provision in the bill, the expectations here are turning toward a more limited deal. And that may be what we see when those negotiations start in February of next year.
OK, France 24's Dave Keating in Brussels. Thank you very much indeed for bringing us up to speed.